So, my wife has caught the bug, the jiu-jitsu bug, and another bug, unfortunately. It's flu season here in Ohio. And so we decided we're gonna do a video here in our home dojo on when to train and when not to train. So I've been doing this for a long time, and I've seen a lot of people come in and out, sometimes when they shouldn't be training. But there's also some times where you could be injured and still should be training. You could modify it. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the other day, kids start getting sick, and we're like, oh man, like fever. We knew kind of what was happening, and it was just one after the other. It just started. We got 8 kids, so it was just like steamrolls in our house.
It was like 24 hours, and 6 of them were down.
Boom. So we knew kind of what we were dealing with, and it was one of her favorite class time days is on Tuesday, and her friends show up on that class, and she has not shown any symptoms yet. And I was like, I can stay home and watch the kids, and she's asking me, is that really responsible? And the answer is really no. No, it wasn't.
I stayed home,
and
then I got sick.
Which is good, because she didn't start showing symptoms until the next day, but apparently with the flu, from what I've read, or what she's actually told me, is that when you're
24 hours before you show symptoms, you can be contagious.
Yeah, so I made the choice to stay home myself, which is very difficult for me sometimes, getting classes covered, things like that. I can train anytime I want, almost. So for me, taking a day off, 2 days off the mat is not that big a deal, other than, from the business perspective of it. Me being away from the business is kind of tough, but I've got to be smart. So even when I was in there, I didn't make any contact with anybody. I stayed at least 3 feet away, didn't shake hands, anything like that, just to make sure that I wasn't infecting anyone. So if you're sick, stay home. Don't be selfish. I know that you love training jiu-jitsu and you want to do it, but you just can't. If you can avoid spreading germs like that, you've got to, right? Nobody likes to stay away from the mat, but there's just times where you're going to have to do it, right?
And it's probably going to keep you out longer, too, if you push yourself and don't let yourself rest.
Yeah, very important, as you can hear. She wanted to train today. Wanted to train today, but probably not the best idea, all right? So rest. Jiu-Jitsu will be there for you when you're healthy. Injuries. When to train and when not to train. I've had lots of injuries over the years. Number one, if a doctor tells you to stay off the mat, it's probably a good idea. Now, not all doctors will fully understand what jiu-jitsu is and what it entails and how the practice goes. When they hear the term jiu-jitsu, sometimes their thought goes automatically to like mixed martial arts. Well, yeah, I mean, not everybody's training that way every single day, right? So there's a lot of times where I've had a busted elbow, hurt my arm, and I was still able to train. I would just tuck the arm into my belt. Now, it takes a little bit of humility, right? You're gonna get caught more. You're gonna be, it's gonna be a lot more difficult when you're fighting with just one arm. But if you're able to do that and be able to train and not make yourself worse, I think you should do it for sure. And if it's a situation, we're always trying to find a fine level when we train jiu-jitsu, is the highest level of realism possible with the lowest risk of injury. You're always going to be touching that. And there's always a possibility. And what we're doing is a very dangerous thing potentially. So, it really, it depends on if you can train without making that injury worse, then do it. Just be very smart about who you're training with. Let your partners know up front, hey, I've got this injury. We even have this ball of red tape. Hardly anybody uses it, but it's a good idea even to have some sort of a marker for them to remember, like, okay, don't attack the red taped arm, right? So if you can train and not make the injury worse, I think sometimes it could be a very, very good learning tool. And if you're in a situation where you can't train, go watch class. Not if you're like viral, like you can spread it, but if you have an injury, a physical injury that's keeping you off the mat, go watch class. I guarantee you will still have the opportunity to improve. You'll still learn. Skin infections. Big thing in training jiu-jitsu or martial arts in general. If you have any sort of rash or anything that does not look right, stay off the mat until you see a doctor, okay? Do not risk that. I had my very good friend and my instructor, Jeff Hudson, was training, this was years ago. He was training with a guy, got a cut on his ankle, but at the same class, they think it was a fingernail or something that cut his ankle. So this is a small cut. At the very same class, had a small tear in his knee. The next day, it kind of swelled up, right? And so what had happened, he didn't know it at the time, but the infection had entered into that very small cut, and it rested itself into it found itself into that joint. And that's what started to balloon up. And it was a staph infection. I think the very next day, went to see his doctor. His doctor sent him straight to the ER. He was in there for 10 days, almost lost his leg from a tiny cut from a fingernail. If you have any sort of skin infection whatsoever, do not go to class.
That's scary stuff.
Very scary. You do not want to risk that. You don't want to spread it with your training partners. Don't be selfish, okay? I've been there. I've had ringworm. It sucks. It's annoying, but it pales in comparison to something like a staph infection. Pro tip: it's not a spider bite. It's a staph infection. I've countless people say, oh, what's that on your wrist? Oh, it's just a spider bite. It's not a spider bite. Stay off the mat. Go get it checked out. I've rarely ever seen somebody who's actually like doctors say, oh yeah, that's actually a spider bite. It's almost never a spider bite. If you have something that looks like you think of what a spider bite is, go. It's most likely, if you're a grappler or just in mixed martial arts or any of it altogether, it's most likely a staph infection. Get it treated right away. That's all we got. Like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff, and we will see you soon.
Stay healthy.
Stay healthy.